Batman Returns is, in my personal opinion, the worst Batman movie that's ever been made. It's got very little story, Batman's barely in it, the fights suck because Michael Keaton could barely move in his costume, Batman is so overpowered he stops almost all of the Penguin's plans before they get off the ground, and the film is so tonally inconsistent that it expects you to feel sorry for a man who literally drowns babies. Pretty much the only thing that everybody liked about Batman Returns was its take on Catwoman, so Warner Brothers decided to make a Catwoman spin-off movie. And it sucked too. I would say it's Catwoman in name only, but they didn't even get her name right. Patience Phillips? And good thing too, because Quino is really awkward to say. Anyway, given how often video games of good movies turn out to suck, go figure, the video game of Catwoman sucks even worse.
You wanna play my game?
I don't know if that's supposed to be sexy or an intervention, like, are you sure that you want to play this? The game begins with Quino wandering the city when she comes across a jewelry store being robbed. She goes to stop the robbery and... oh, what fresh hell is this? The entire game is played with fixed cameras that are often stuck in the corner of the room. You have pretty much no control over the camera as it sways back and forth when you cross a room like the cameraman is drunk. The entire game is built around platforming, which means most of the time when you try to make a jump, the camera isn't centered behind you so that you can make sure if you're lined up correctly. Even trying to figure out where you're supposed to go in any given room is a pain in the ass because you can only ever see one corner of the room at any given time. You navigate rooms by wandering in circles, hoping that the camera will eventually pan over to what you want to look at, and you have to gradually map out the room in your head. I didn't find out until the end of the game that you actually can move the camera with the D-pad, but all you can do is rotate the camera a little bit to the left and right from its fixed location. It still doesn't let you actually look around the room, and it snaps back to where it was as soon as you release the button anyway. So there is no relief from this. I mean, seriously, what the hell? The camera is just a constant problem. It adds a layer of irritation to everything you do in an already terrible game. The game's story is awful. As with the movie, Patience goes to her office's headquarters to drop off a presentation. She stumbles across an evil plot, gets killed by the guards, and comes back to life as Quino. You see all of this after the tutorial stage. You then spend the next 4 levels, 4 out of 12, chasing after some guy with absolutely no idea who he is. After you catch him, you find out he's the guy who killed her. You go to Hedare headquarters to look for clues, find nothing. Go to Hedare Mansion, find nothing. The game sticks rigidly to the story of the movie. Almost nothing happens, none of the characters are interesting, and the villain sucks. It's impossible to care about anything that happens in this game. Let's talk about the combat, because they really screwed the pooch on this one. Let's just take a look at the controller for a second. R jumps, L runs and climbs, and Z triggers cat vision. Take a guess which button you use to attack. Maybe it's one of these big center buttons that are used to do everything in every other GameCube game? Nope. You attack enemies by flicking the C stick, the stick that's out of reach on the GameCube controller and usually only used for moving the camera. It's dumb. Some moron decided to map all the crucial common actions to the awkward outermost edge buttons on the controller. But flicking the C stick doesn't actually attack enemies. It just uses the whip, which barely does squat to enemies. If you actually want to attack enemies, you have to hold the left shoulder button and flick the C stick to kick. You need 2 buttons at once to use your only attack. But that's still not the end of it. Get this, even the kicks don't actually hurt enemies. The only way to take an enemy down is to kick them into an environmental hazard like a dumpster. Apparently this character that is meant to empower women is too physically weak to knock anybody unconscious, because you can kick a douche in the face 24 times, nothing happens unless you knock him into some cardboard boxes or shit. So combat quickly becomes infuriating as you just kick the same guy over and over and over again, trying to line him up with an environmental hazard until finally it freaking works and you can move on. And yeah, you have to kick enemies exactly into stage hazards with a fixed camera so that you can never tell if you're lined up with the hazard correctly. I can appreciate trying to make your game's combat unique, but how do you screw up something as simple as hit bad guy until he fall down? Eventually, I figured out that if you beat up someone enough, they'll eventually get scared and sit still in the middle of the level. Attack them again and they'll take off running into a stage hazard and defeat themselves. So if enemies still get incapacitated by hitting them enough times, then why not just have Quino knock the enemies unconscious? It comes off like the game's dev team was a bunch of insecure broskies that flat out refused to animate a woman beating a man unconscious. Seriously, I'm not trying to be a misogynist here, I'm just trying to comprehend the logic of making a superhero game where said superhero is wholly incapable of incapacitating any of the enemies on their own power. It feels like some kind of sexist statement about women being weak, like we'd sooner have enemies kill themselves than show a woman actually overpowering a man. Am I reading too much into this? I'm just trying to make sense out of how dumb this entire combat system is. On top of being ridiculous, the combat is ridiculously easy. Hitting an enemy once knocks them down, and it takes at least 2 full seconds for them to get back up, and longer than that for them to actually attack you. You knock them down, wait for them to get back up, hit them again, and 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 again, for the love of God, stay the down! You'll never get ganged up on, even if you do fight multiple enemies at once. One hit puts an enemy out of commission long enough to nail all the enemies and get a pedicure before that first guy is a threat again. There isn't a single fight in the entire game that's an actual challenge. Combat is so boring. Come on, just die. Just die already! Expire, you dumb bastard! Well, I think I've stalled long enough. Let's dig into the biggest problem with the game. See, you don't actually do a whole lot of combat in this game. Depending on the level, there's rarely even half a dozen groups of enemies in any given stage. The vast majority of the game is built around platforming, making your way to the end of the level by climbing walls and grates, swinging from poles, swinging between perches with the whip, and it's some of the worst platforming that I've ever seen. You move so damn slowly that moving anywhere is tedious and boring to begin with, but the game is so restrictive with what you're allowed to do that a lot of the platforming devolves into frustrating trial and error. It's really hard to explain. To begin with, you can climb walls by running into them, but you can't move left or right while on the wall, just straight up. So you have to line yourself up before climbing or you won't get to where you want to go. Many of the walls in levels arbitrarily cannot be climbed, so several times I end up hurling myself into every wall that I can find until I find the one wall that I'm allowed to climb up. To get off the wall, you press the R button, but depending on how you're holding the control stick, R will either gently dislodge you from the wall or send you leaping off the wall, sailing clean over the ledge you were going for and falling down. Have you ever played a game where one button did 2 polar opposite things? Jumping in general takes a lot of getting used to. The jumping is super stiff to where you can't control your jump in mid-leap. You jump super far like you're on the moon, and you can't control how far you jump. Plus, something that goes against every instinct you have as a gamer, you can't jump while running. If there's a far gap and you try to use L to get a running start at the jump, you'll just walk right off the edge and fall. I hate it when a game has bad controls because it's so hard to explain. The only way I can think to explain just how finicky the game is with a few examples. Take this spot right here. I'm supposed to attach the whip to this power line and swing over to the next whip point. Pretty simple stuff, but look at this. I keep whipping the power junction, which is what I'm supposed to do, and nothing happens. The whip just detaches. To get the swing to work, I have to climb onto this grate off to the side and then try the whip, and that's what gets Quino to finally swing from this ledge. What kind of arbitrary bullcrap is that? The whip only works in one spot, but finally I make the jump. Shit! This is the start of the level! And now this jump that comes later, I have to do the same thing. Use the whip to attach to this perch point that I can swing from, but now trying to whip from the mesh doesn't work, and Quino will only swing from this junction if I jump to the wall first. Or take this part right here. I'm supposed to jump off this wall and grab onto this bar so I can do some gymnastic shit on it and proceed further into the level. But no matter how many times I try this jump, I just keep passing right through the bar. On attempt number 7, yes, 7 times I had to try this jump and failed before it finally worked, and guess what made it work? This jump is hard-coded to only work if you're not touching the control stick when you make the jump. I am not kidding. If you jump and try to aim for the bar, like anybody with a measurable IQ would do, you pass right through it and fall regardless of whether you actually hit it or not. I only ever made this jump if I wasn't touching the control stick at all. I almost swear that they went through the entire game and hard-coded every single jump with very specific requirements to make it, or else you just slide right off because you're constantly missing jumps that you should have made with no problem. Every jump in the game is like this. Probably the most constant problem is these horizontal bars you have to do gymnastic swings from. I swear, about half of the time that I try to jump to one of these bars, I miss. Even though it looks like I should make it, even if it looks like I land dead center in the middle of the bar, often I just fall through, and when I do make the jump, it's when I'm doing absolutely nothing different from when I was trying and failing. Given how picky the game is at registering other jumps in platforming, it makes me wonder just how specific you need to be for the game to actually attach you to that bar you're jumping at. Like, there's probably a few square pixels you're supposed to stand on and a range of a few degrees you're supposed to hold the control stick, and the game is so poorly programmed that it only connects the jump if you're doing it exactly correct. It's the equivalent of falling through platforms in a side scroller. The game only makes the jump if it feels like it. One thing that I think is kind of a nice touch is that if you're jumping around and Quino hits her head on something, she makes a pained grunt noise, and it's deeply satisfying to think that you can actively punish the in-game character for screwing up everything you're trying to do! And the major thing that takes all of the problems with the platforming and crumples it into a white-hot ball of rage is this. The controls are so loose and the platforming so horribly programmed that you're constantly missing jumps through no fault of your own. And every time that you fall or miss a jump, you have to backtrack all the way back to where you were. See, levels without fail always have you travel upward, to where missing a single jump forces you to cross the entire room again. Take the mansion, for example. You come across a basketball stadium, because what makeup company executive's mansion is complete without a fully stocked basketball stadium, and at the end of it you jump over to this little garden. Just have to jump to that pole. Shit! Missed the jump. So now I have to spend at least 2 full minutes going all the way back through this gym again. And I am not exaggerating that. Look how freaking slowly Catwoman climbs along grates. Okay, finally I make the jump. I don't want to miss this again, so I scout out the area ahead. Okay, now we'll carefully miss the jump. Far back through the damn gym again, because the only thing more infuriating than missing a simple jump because the game didn't register it is having to backtrack 2 or 3 minutes for another shot at it, and then still missing the jump and having to do it again anyway. And then there's this alley in the tutorial that I had to climb all the way back up 5 goddamn times because I kept trying to jump across the path that was just part of the background instead of the level. I don't expect a magic cloud to appear and ferry me up to the ledge where I fell, but it just pisses me off. It doubles the time, at least, that I spend in every single level because I have to keep backtracking multiple rooms that I've already crossed until the game feels like registering a damn jump! Any level that's set in an alley or etc. outdoor location is an absolute nightmare to navigate because these levels are full of paths that look like you should be able to follow them, but they either lead to nowhere or they're just part of the background. Be it walls that you can't climb, ledges you slide right off of, or jumps that it looks like you should be able to make but you just slide off some kind of invisible air cushion when you try. Since these levels are so poorly designed you often can't tell where you're supposed to go, you have a cat vision that you can use by holding Z. It switches to this first-person view where you can see cat tracks showing where you're supposed to go. That is, if you're looking at the exact right spot, because there's only like a foot of tracks in any given spot. What confused the hell out of me is that they give you a tutorial for this mechanic in the second level, in a section of the level that has no tracks. So I run around in circles for 10 minutes like a dumbass looking for something that doesn't exist. Another problem with the game is often the path you're supposed to follow will lead to nowhere unless you interact with something that looks like part of the scenery. It's usually a fuse box, so you wander around in circles for 10 minutes wondering what the hell you're supposed to do until you stumble onto the fuse box by accident. The game is also ridiculously short. It took me about 6 hours to finish the game, and that's with me having to backtrack across entire levels multiple times repeatedly. I'm pretty sure that if you managed to make every jump the way the game is designed, the game would only be about 3 hours long. The game has upgrades that you purchase using diamonds, which you get for doing well in the levels. Every single upgrade is exclusively for the combat, which is already way too easy without the upgrades. The only upgrade that's worth cat scat is the ability to whip guns out of enemies' hands. Everything else, it's trivial to finish the game without them. I bought one power-up called the Domination Mode. It acts kind of like a rage mode where a bar will build up as you're in combat and you can use it to supercharge your attacks. Or at least you would if they remembered to program it into the game. There is no domination bar. This power-up does absolutely nothing. Then there's an upgrade where you can press the A button where Quino will strike a pose and it will cause guards to run up to you distracted so you can land easy hits on them. It's like, yeah, she's a dangerous criminal breaking and entering. I'm under strict orders to kill her and she keeps kicking me in the face and the junk. But that ass, though. What's funny is the pose even works against the female guards in the last level. Hey, I'm not judging. The upgrade that's apparently so awesome that it's locked until the end of the game is a power-up that lets your cat sense spot enemies through walls. Nothing is ever hidden behind a wall. Enemies never spawn behind walls. Even if they did spawn behind walls, the AI is programmed to run out from behind the wall and punch you in the face the second they materialize. When the hell am I ever going to use that power-up? Did you even know what kind of game they were making? There are 4 boss fights in the game and they suck ass too. Your attacks constantly bounce right off the bosses because you can't hit a boss if they're in the middle of an attack animation, and their attacks wind up for at least 3 full seconds. Knocking a boss into a stage hazard takes off about 1/3 of their health at once, while your normal attacks, at first I didn't think it did anything, but it just hurts them really slowly. The bosses never change up their patterns either. One of the bosses just has 2 snipers come out and take pot shots at you, and I don't know what these guys intend to hit from a rooftop carrying shotguns! And this really is a moot point because you'll almost never die, but the game's live system is really asinine. You start the game with 9 lives, get it, because cats, and any lives that you lose stay lost through the entire rest of the game. The only way to get lives back is to find Quino's pet cat Midnight in a level, and I only ever found this little bastard by accident because the game conditions you not to explore. But like I said, you'll never need to find him because you'll almost never die. I died 3 times in the entire game, and all of them were in the last few levels where the game routinely traps you in a room full of enemies that shoot at you from off screen, and I've never heard of ammo or needing to reload. It's ridiculous. There's a level called the Derelict Building where you're getting shot at the entire freaking level, and this level is built with a ton of paths that are just scenery, so you're constantly running in circles trying to figure out where to go while being riddled with bullets. Plus the cat vision, you know, that thing that's supposed to show you where to go. For some bewildering reason, trying to use it in this one level fills the screen with red and causes you damage. What the actual hell? If you're almost dead, you recover health so as not to die from fall damage, and you can instantly refill your health to 100 just by beating up an enemy that's already scared, so you have to suck really hard to actually need any of those extra lives. Oh, in this room right here, where I lost one of my lives, the only way out of it is to swing from a bit of scenery that is never shown by any of the fixed cameras. Hate this shit! After the Derelict Building is a level called the Performance Center. Let me tell you about the Performance Center. I have a video that is 30 minutes long. That is me trying and failing to get to the top of this one freaking room. Climbing up, jumping across the scaffolding or whatever the hell it's called, only to pass right through a bar that I totally jumped to and have to climb all the way back to the top and miss the jump again. Half an hour of climbing up this entire room over and over and over and over again because the jumping is so damn broken. I wish I'd been recording audio when I did this because you'd be able to listen as patience erodes into irritation, irritation erodes into boredom, boredom erodes into anger, and anger erodes into burning rage. Finally up to the last stage. I fight more goons, same goons as the rest of the game, boring. I platform through the level, same slow and tedious platform mechanics as the rest of the game, boring. Fight evil Sharon Stone, who seems mildly irritated at best by all of my attacks. Oh, so boring. Did you know that evil Sharon Stone in the movie has the same backstory as one of the Clay Faces, being disfigured and mutated by overuse of a cosmetic with toxins in it? Makes you wonder if in one of the umpteen drafts of the movie script the villain of the movie was supposed to be Clayface. Would have made for a much more interesting, oh thank God she's dead, game over, I'm out. Catwoman is awful! The movie was bad, the game is worse. The entire time you're playing, you're either pissed off or you're bored because the game has so few actual mechanics, and the ones it does have are both repetitive and ridiculously glitchy. This isn't one of those tragic games that could have been good but got bogged down with problems. There's nothing fun in this entire damn game. Well, I take it back. There is one, and exactly one, good thing about this game. Oh yeah, this looks like a good spot for some stress relief. Behold, the most accurate visual metaphor for playing Catwoman.